seats again. Ready for part 2 of the class. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's look at our fingernail clipper example. All right. So we're targeting this market. This is our idea. All right. In our minds, who are the customers? People with fingers. People with fingers, okay. People with fingers, good. All right, that's a start, okay.
People with nails.
People with nails. People with fingernails, okay, that's good. Longer nails than they want, okay. All right. Yeah.
It's hard to know unless you knew what was happening right before.
Okay, we've probably had fingernail clippers most of our lives, yeah, okay. But let's see, yeah, we'll go back.
People who don't bite their nails.
People, all right, so, right, people, all right, so let's go. Maybe that's, what do they do now? Maybe let's go to that part. Okay, people bite their nails, right? All right, people use knives, right? In the old days, scissors,
Rock?
right? Rocks. Actually, rocks was one of the most common things, right? People would have, right? What you see now, right? A lot of women that have long fingernails use an emery board, right? The old days, pumice, right? People would take pumice and basically just use that to file down their nails, or just rocks, any rough rock would do, right? Okay? All right, so let's say we're in the rock age, right? Moving people into the fingernail clipper age, okay? So what is the gain in pain? Yeah.
I think we're also missing that this may be a problem that we have in a modern society where it wasn't necessarily an issue there because a lot of jobs would have taken care of the nails.
All right, so maybe it limits our market. Good point, right? Okay. Well, what are the problems you have? Let's say my nails aren't trimmed, right? Hang nails, right? I could rip off a nail. Potential source of pain, right?
I can see that it was a hard way to clip it. You could suffer.
Right. You could cut your finger, right? If you're scraping it on a rock, right? You get a little far, right? Then you're scraping skin off, right?
Yeah,
Not
convenient.
Right, not so good. Convenient. Yep.
You want to probably like, well, the thing maybe, since cosmetics, few people would actually be concerned about that, right? Like people in higher positions.
Right. Yeah. You could write status symbol, right? I had nicely rounded fingernails, right? So that was potentially cool. I don't know. If you have like gel nails, maybe you can't use these, right? Maybe you have to, right? I don't know. There might be certain places where you couldn't do that. Maybe you had painted fingernails. You didn't work for that, right? Okay. So what does our product do? What's the value, right? Okay, we kind of talked about that, right? It's easy, right? I don't have to get a knife, don't have to find a hammer, don't have to find a giant rock, don't have to travel to a volcanic region to get hummus, whatever it does. Okay? All right.
And it trims it nicely in the shape
Right.
of your finger.
Shapes, right? So there's some status. So somebody said that, right? That may be the elite that could afford my fingernail clippers, right? They had nicely trimmed nails, right? It's got this little thing to get all the dirt out from underneath. Maybe the lower classes, right, had dirty fingernails. To do that, right? Lots of potential things you could do. Okay, so then you start asking customers, okay, what's this worth, right? Go on the internet, right? Get some nice little fake gold-plated fingernail trimmer for $1.70, right? Amazon Prime member, I get it delivered for free. Okay, so that some market, all right? I'm searching. I also found this one, $35, right? There's a market for a male fingernail clipper, right? This is particularly targeted for men, right? Ultra slim, right? So they're targeting this market for men. It's important that it's ultra slim, I guess, so you can sneak it in your pocket because maybe, right before a big business meeting, you need to trim your nails or something like that. So this company has identified a market, that some people are willing to pay $35, right, for a fingernail clipper, right? So they've gone through this. They've segmented their market that we'll talk about later, and there must be a market there, right? So what is this? This is appealing, right? It probably works about as well as this one, right? So they're not appealing to the, perfectly trimmed edges, right? That fingernail would probably work fine, right? So they're appealing to that emotional part. I've got a $35 fingernail clipper, right? You kind of scroll down, right? This thing's won design awards, right? And stuff like that. So I guess there's some fingernail clipper design award or something like that, right? Okay? So think about that. As you go through your products, all those things can be important. To be able to do that. Okay. All right. So now we're going to switch over to customer segments. And what's important then is that you align that value proposition with each of those customer segments, right? So our $1.70 nail clippers might be, This is, you know, I'm going after the cheap, I'm selling it at CVS, okay? Anybody could just walk in and pick it up, right? So that's my channel. I've covered some of those ideas. It's just a general utilitarian fingernail clipper. The $35 market, right? It's got to look good. It's got to do that because it's appealing to a whole different market segment, right? My distribution channel may be at Tiffany's. It's got to come in that little clever blue box or whatever, right? So those are going to be very different strategies for a product that basically does the same thing, right? So at the end, both of you have nice looking nails. The process in the middle and how you get it to your customers and the money you make and everything else, right, could be very different, right? So, you know, if the $1.70 one breaks or whatever, right, I chuck it in the trash and go buy another $1.70 one, right? So they probably don't have a return channel, right, to do that. $35 one, that breaks, I'm going to be pretty mad, right? So they have to deal with customer returns. They probably have to have a customer service thing that says, oh, people don't know how to use it. I've got to have a little, you know, YouTube video that shows them how to use the snazzy features of my $35 fingernail clipper, right? So all those things, that's kind of the 9 parts of that business model canvas. You got to think through all of those different parts, right? Because that'll have a different cost structure, a different revenue structure, different channels. You're targeting different customers, right? This, you know, the $35 one, maybe I'm advertising on the America's Cup, right? Or some high-end sporting event, right? Those are my customers. That's where they go, right? The $1.71, that's going to appear in the bottom of my, you know, Walgreens ad or whatever. So very different ways you're going to market with those 2 products. All right. So as you're doing this, as you're trying to connect your value proposition to your customer segment, one of the key things is what's called a minimum viable product, okay? So this is now a product, sort of in quotes, it's going to allow you to get feedback from your customer, okay? So it tests your understanding of the problem and how your customer's going to react to it, okay? It is not a product that you're going to go to market with. It's basically like a soap carving, think about that, of your product so you can start getting that information. All right, it's going to have the minimum set of features that you need to learn. They call them early evangelists or early adopters is kind of that. Okay, the people you're going to approach first and start getting feedback. Okay? You want to have lots of all-by contact. It's not a minimum product. It's basically a concept that's going to give you ideas. And it's really going to answer that bottom question. My customers don't know what they want. And they don't until you give them, especially if you're in a new market, until you give them an idea of what it could do and start engaging that discussion. One is they're going to tell you things you probably never thought about, right? Okay, and that's the important part of having it. Oh, I could use it to cut fabric. All right, okay. I didn't think about that. It was really a nail trimmer, but maybe make a bigger one. It'll cut toenails. Okay, oh, you doubled your market size, right? Right off the bat, right? Now I'll make a giant version of that. Okay, maybe I need a big lever. You know, I don't know what it needs. You can ask them how often you trim your toenail. Oh, yeah. Every time I trim my fingernails, I'm tired of eating them, right? It's really hard to get your foot to your mouth, to chew your toenails off, whatever, right? You may get a whole new problem you didn't even know about, right? You guys probably don't have kids yet, right? When you have little kids, you actually eat their fingernails because they won't let you clip their fingernails normally. So yeah, you have that to look forward to. Okay? So you want to get something that you can start showing the customers because they really can't give you good feedback on an idea, right? Jaws on a plane. Oh yeah, it could be good. Who's that? What's that? What kind of, is it a 747? Is it a 727? What kind of plane, right? They're going to ask you that. So you need something to start doing that. Okay, so how do you define that minimum viable product? Here's a mobile web example. You're going to build that low fidelity app, okay? Minimal set of features, but it's on the phone. So now they can start giving, I can't read that, emergency, let's say I have an app that's going to show me the nearest emergency room. Okay, yeah, clever, right? You might need that once in a blue moon. Okay, but it can't have teeny little print, right? Where I'm like trying to drive, right? I need giant things, turn right now, right? And maybe I'm injured, right? So get it out there, start testing your understanding of the problem. Okay, you can later improve that. Go through the next version, get some more feedback. So you're trying to understand, do you understand the problem? And then is your solution solving an important problem for the customer? Not an important problem for you, an important problem for the customer. Okay, so the goal is you don't want to build a product nobody wants. You don't want to spend a lot of time and a lot of money, right? You have a limited amount of capital as a startup company. Potentially it's your own money, so very limited startup capital, okay? You don't want to spill all your time and money doing that. All right, and you want to basically get the maximum feedback. So you want maximum feedback per unit time invested. Build a simple one, get some feedback. Build a more complex one, get some more feedback. Repeat that cycle. Okay. All right. So we'll do that. So customers. Okay. So who are they? So here we had, right? Went through our customers. Could be everybody. Could be only men. Could be only men that have $35 to spend on toenail clippers. Okay? That could be. Why are they going to buy, right? Back to why. $35 toenail clippers, probably more than just utilitarian. I want to look cool, right? Or, people that go through my medicine cabinet, I want them to be impressed with, what they find in my medicine cabinet. All right? To be able to do that. All right. Important, where are they geographically? Okay? If we're selling high-tech, if I'm selling a semiconductor bonding system, all right? My customers are all going to be in Asia. They don't do that in basically the United States anymore, okay? So think about your customers. It may say, all right, everything on that product has to be in metric, okay? It may have to be dual language compatible, right? I may need a button that goes from Chinese to Indian to Thai to English to Japanese, right? The instructions, right? Biggest problem we had is error messages always came up in English, right? The product I was in. Great, they had to call over the shift supervisor who spoke English to tell them what the problem was. Okay, so you have to think about things like that. Okay, less of a problem maybe in technology space, but what are the other attributes? Are they single? Are they mostly male? Is the product going to be used outdoors? Okay, things like that. Okay, so back to that. Customers do not exist for you. You're there to help them. You've got to think about it that way. Just because you make a great product in your mind doesn't mean anybody wants to buy it. Okay, so once again, each value proposition will have a customer segment and vice versa. All right, so now we'll go through this chart a little more, but the customer's doing something. So this is this job segment, right? They're trimming their nails, right? Nails need to be trimmed. Okay, figure out what are the problems or the needs, okay? How do you turn those into eliminating pains and making the gains better? So think about what the customer's doing, right? They're doing a job, right? That job may allow them to make more money, okay? Right? So I'm writing proposals, all right? Maybe something that always sticks the data management plan in there. Oh, that'd be cool. God, that's basically boilerplate anyway. Somebody that takes a good data management plan and sticks it in my topic, okay? So once again, a little unhappy customer guy, you're solving his or her problem. All right, so think about the jobs that need to be done. In that customer segment, what are they trying to do? Okay, trying to have nice fingernails. I'm tired of scratching my spouse. Tired of closing the door and rips my nail off. Whatever the problem is. Okay, you do that. All right. So, what are the functional aspects? All right, what are they trying to do? We talked a little bit about the emotional parts. Is that an element? Once again, less so usually for technology, although certainly high-end phones and things like that really appeal to it. I've got 8 million pixels on my screen. Okay, at this point in my age, probably about 1 million pixels is most I'm going to see to do that. But if you're watching high-def video on a plane somewhere, that's important to you. That's a status symbol. My phone has a kickstand, right? Okay. That's important to you, right? That some customer segment. My phone has phones that have little pens that you can draw on your phone, right? That's important to some segment of the customers. You have to understand that, okay? So what are the basic needs? Is it entertainment, communication, making money, understand what you're solving for the customer. All right? And then what are the customers doing? So for a lot of us, the customers are sort of the end customers. So they're buying it to do it to make something. If we're selling now capital equipment, right? So they're buying our product to make more money, right? So they're going to buy our product, put it on their line, it's going to stamp out more widgets, it's going to do it faster, it's going to do it with less errors, things like that. So think about where they are in the process. Are there co-creators? Okay, so Adobe sells Acrobat, Photoshop, and things like that. So people are buying those products to create other things. So they're enabling that, right? Okay, so how are they going to use your product to be able to do that? And then are they transfers, right? So I might buy a phone and put an app. I download 10,000 of the most favorite songs, and I sell that as a package. Okay, so think about your customers. How are they going to use your products? Ultimately, how are they going to make money, achieve status? happier spouse, whatever the ultimate goal is.
Nail clippers.
Okay. So now take a look at all those customer segments and rank them. Once again, you're going to rank them, test them, and go through. So rank each according to how big a market you think it is. Is this a customer, is it a critical, something they have to have, right? So tires, you have to have tires on your car, okay? Do I need a seat heater on my car? Maybe in Alaska, that's a critical item, right? Okay, South Florida, seat heaters, not so much. All right, what happened back there, Allison? You guys good?
Actually, nail clippers would be really
Nail
helpful.
clippers.
Not this top off,
Let's
but
see.
no.
All right,
we're-
how often are they going to do that, right? Something they're going to do more often, that's more important, right? Something they're going to do once in a blue moon, that may not be as important. Okay? And then now you start building that model of how the customer is going to use your product, and then you're going to test that. Okay? So nail clippers, right? Maybe my first hypothesis, every few days, right? So people are going to keep their nails trimmed. You start talking to customers once a month, once a week, maybe never. I have ingrown toenails. Can you fix that problem, right? That may be where, where they come back and look at it and try to understand. So that's the goal. Make a hypothesis, test it, change your hypothesis, test it again. All right? So customer gains. We went through a lot of this, so there's a little more detail here. So what do they expect? What do they desire? What surprises them? Oh, I can download coupons from the web when I'm checking out at the grocery store. Hey, that's cool. I don't have to carry this big wad of coupons with me when I go to the grocery store, right? Safeway now, I think when I walk in, they just start downloading coupons on my little phone or something like that. For products I don't even need, right? But okay, I've done that. All right? Emotional, cost savings, what are the things you're going to make
That's
better
why
for
they
the
put
customer?
wheels on it. That was a
I'm not going to
value
go through and
proposition.
read all of these. But think about flatter
You relate
learning
to where you
curve,
want
right?
the
So
policy.
now I'm bringing my SDN network. Maybe I've made some software that automatically reconfigures each top of rack, right?
Crazy.
So you do the first one. Now plug in your USB drive. It's just going to replicate that for that whole rack. Wow. Okay, that's a lot of cost savings, right? To do that. So you make one, take my USB drive around. Within a very short period of time, I reconfigured my whole data set. Okay, that's learning curve, saves the customer money, make sure they're all the same. A lot of different advantages to having a product like that. More time. Social consequences. What are the customers looking for? What's important? $35 nail clipper. I want good design. Maybe I want lifetime guarantee against loss or breakage. Okay, the $1.70 nail clipper. I'm chucking that, heading to CVS to buy another one. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about looking and making a customer archetype to do that. The other side is the pains. What are the things that are a problem for them now? So mostly think of those as negatives. If you fix a negative, that's a positive, but it's just a different way to think about it. All right, things that take a lot of time, things that cost too much. Okay, we're going to go through there. What are the solutions that are underperforming right now? So right now I have to burn a CD. I've got to take the CD, put it on, take my CD drive, put it on the new system. All right, can I do it wirelessly? Right, maybe just hit a button, mass distribute every top of rack switch configuration to the whole thing instantly. Okay, so what's hard? What keeps them awake at night? Right, so now if I lose my one fob with all the top of rack instructions set up, okay, that's bad, right? Or maybe back it up to the cloud. Okay, what are the barriers that are keeping them from adopting? Right, capital equipment, large upfront charge. Right, so now, yep, I believe you. You're going to make my thing twice as fast. I don't have $100,000. Can't buy your product, right? So it's not available to me. Okay, maybe we can lease it, right? There's a third party we'll work with. That's my partner channel, right? Work with GE Capital or whoever's out there. They buy it for me. They lease it back to you. They make money. Your costs are lower to do that. So think about those parts, right? What's feeling bad? What are they annoying with? Less of a problem once again in technology, but eliminating this risk of social embarrassment to be able to do that. So oftentimes very helpful in some markets. In Japan, the first time I went to Japan, right? Everybody has those little 5-gallon water things where you push the lever and the water comes out, right? You put it on. Well, in the U.S., they kind of made a lot of noise, right? So they went glug, 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 glug when the water went in, right? Okay. Japan, this is probably an office for 30 people, and there's a little water container sitting over there, right? So it was sort of embarrassing. People knew you were getting water, right? Because it sort of made noise, right? Sort of social stigma attach that. So you go to Japan, they have this little, basically this little, it kind of looks like a little pumice stone that has lots of little teeny air holes. So when you let water out of there, it's just this little fine, little small air bubbles that go to the top, and it makes no noise. Okay? So somebody identified a problem and fixed that. You know, the ones in Japan don't make any noise. And so, they're also smaller, right? So, you know, the market there, they couldn't lift 5 pounds, right? 40 pounds, water's 8 pounds a gallon. So they have little 2.5 gallon ones with handles. So different markets require different solutions to do that. Okay, so one of the ways to do this in almost every market is to make up this fictitious customer, okay? So that you can better identify with them and what their problems are. So we'll call it a customer archetype. All right, so you define that person. Who are they? Position, age, sex if that's important, title, role, okay? So now here's my SDN automation system. My customer, the person that's going to use it, we'll call that the customer for now. We'll talk a little bit more about different types of customer, okay? So their job title is what? You know, maintenance engineer, okay? Top of rack maintenance engineer, okay? That's their title. They're probably in their 20s or 30s, right? It's an entry-level position. You're going to move up and be the guy in the big control room. Maybe that's your career goal to do that, okay? So you start thinking about what that person looks like. Okay, how do they buy? So is this a personal purchase? Okay, so maybe it's a iPhone. Okay, that's sort of a personal purchase. Okay, BlackBerries were sort of business purchases when they first came out, right? Your whole company would standardize on BlackBerry. Okay, so same device, different focus. Hey, Bob.
How many of you guys know what a BlackBerry is?
Oh,
Okay,
it wasn't as bad as my aliens reference. Yeah.
It's funny.
Pagers, right? My first pager the company. I see that. All right. So where's that money coming from? Is it coming out of the capital budget? Let's say I'm still selling the technology. Is it a capital purchase? Is it a maintenance purchase? Okay, out of that company's budget. Okay, so think about that. Those have different levels of sign-off, right? Most companies now, anything more than $25,000 has to get signed off by a VP. Okay, so you're going to have to set your strategy. You're going to have to convince everybody up that chain that this is going to be great, make their status better, save them money, get them promoted to the C-suite. You know, whatever that strategy is. Okay, but name the budget that it's coming out of. Okay, what matters to them? What motivates them? Right. Part of it, a lot of times in these maintenance issues, I'm tired of being called at 2 a.m. to reconfigure this top of rack switch. Okay, right? It's a huge drawback for a lot of the maintenance guys, right? So if that's your target, right? Oh, no, you just log in, do that remotely from your home, boom, right? One of the companies I was working with, we sold our product to pathologists, right? So if they're going to look for cancer or something like that, they make a slide, they look at it under the microscope. So they used to have to go in to the hospital, right? Because that's where the slide was, that was where the microscope was. You know, there's sometimes emergency surgeries, right? You've got to look and see. So they have to go in at 3 or 4 in the morning. One of the selling points of our product was we'd digitize that, send it to you. You could look at it at home on your computer screen. You could say, yeah, you cut here, yeah, you've gotten all the cancer or whatever, okay? So that was, for a lot of the pathologists, that was a big selling point, right? They could do that in their pajamas and get up, get their doctor clothes on, go in, change into their scrubs, sit down at the microscope, because the operation itself, just generally took a few minutes. Right, but it was all the prep work and then going home, try to go back to sleep because I've got I've got a 6 a.m. that I got to be up for. So that was a lot of the selling point for that. So what motivates them? They get to their golf game earlier, whatever it is, you've got to understand that part of the equation. Okay, who influences them? Okay, what do they listen to? What reviews? Okay, once again, less so for most, I'd say, capital equipment product. Although when we sold into the semiconductor business, if you got Intel on board, that was a big deal. Intel was perceived as the leader, right? They're spending about twice as much on capital equipment. Them and Samsung spend about half the capital equipment market in the world for the semiconductor space. So if they were your customers, it was generally known among the rest of the industry. So that was where all the battles were, right? Once you were in those two companies, that influenced a lot of the rest of the market, okay? If you're in the car business, right, getting the consumer reports or getting the road and track or car and driver or I guess they just announced the Detroit Automotive Awards, right? What are the things that are going to influence that market segment? And it may be very different. The people that are reading consumer reports may not be reading road and track, right? Very different market segments. So what's important to them? Draw a day in the life of the customer. Well, what do? spending 6 hours every day updating every top of rack switch. Okay? All right, so here's mine. Okay, so the guy's name is, I pulled this off his Facebook page. All right, name is Biff Overskis. Okay, so what does he like to do? He likes to ski, surf, and rock climb. Okay? Salary, he makes about $90K. Okay?
Pretty well.
Got a good job.
It's a classic
He's
thing.
got about $10,000 of disposable income. Well, that's good. I like that. Okay. So what's his problem? He's looking for something to do in the summer when the surf is out, right? Waves are flat, can't do much of any surfing, right? That's his problem. All right. So one option, kite surfing. I make kite surfing equipment. Okay? But he's intimidated by the cost of getting this little rig, right? I got to buy a harness. I got to buy a kite. I got to take kite lessons, right? So he's intimidated by learning that, right? So my job then, my product is, my goal is I want this picture on his Facebook page, right? Here's Biff out kite surfing, okay? So I want to get that on his Facebook page. So I want to walk through that, and how am I going to pull that off? What motivates him, right? Maybe he's got to have cool kite surfing gear, right? I don't know what the answer is, right? What influences them? What do they read? So we'll walk through some examples of that, but make that, all right? So mine's the operator guy, right? Going around every top of rack switch, download. So he's got to bring that top of rack switch down, plug the USB card in, download it, make sure it's fine, bring the top of rack switch up. Okay, that's his job. He's doing that 6 hours a day. You know, maybe he gets a bathroom break every once in a while. How do I make his job easier? Okay? Think about your customer. All right, so who's the customer? All right, so you can have multiple levels of customer, especially the more expensive your product is, you're going to have to sell it at multiple points, okay? So is the customer a user, an influencer, a recommender, the decision maker, and the economic buyer? We'll just call that person a buyer at this point, all right? Certainly if you're selling big semiconductor capital equipment, you have all of those. You may occasionally have another person that you have to deal with, and we'll call that person a saboteur, okay? So that's someone who's trying to convince them not to buy your product. Okay? And we'll go through some examples. All right.
That
So
can be from the competition?
it can be, yeah, absolutely. It can be somebody inside them. Let's say we had an example where we made molecular beam epitaxy equipment. So very expensive layers, makes very thin films, very high quality, okay? So the way they were doing it now was evaporative, okay? So they had a subject matter expert, an SME. That was all he did. That was, his reason for being in the company was he knew all the details of how to make the best films with an evaporator equipment. Our equipment comes in, his job isn't worth nearly as much as it once was. Fought tooth and nail to make sure, that it was hard for us to get in. Not a bad person. I had lunch with him, but in his mind, his job depended on, evaporative systems being the way to go for this particular process. Okay? All right. So, all right. So make an archetype of each of those customers. What's important to them? Okay, so let's say my idea is I'm going to sell a cell phone to tweens. So you guys know what tweens are? So people that are between children and teenagers, okay? I'm making a special phone for tweens. All right, so who are the users? 9 to 11-year-olds, okay? That's my target customer market, okay? So who are the influencers, right? Who is going to influence that decision? Older siblings, right? Oh yeah, that looks like a cool phone, right? You don't want your older brother, older sister, that's a dorky phone, it's got Donald Duck on it, right? They're never going to sell that, right? Right? They're never going to be interested in buying that, right? So that's an influencer. So it's got to look kind of cool enough to the older sibling, right, that they're not going to talk it down. Other tweens, right? So once somebody gets it, all the cool tweens get it, everybody else is going to want it, right? So you're going to do that. Okay, the recommenders, right? Maybe it's consumer reports, right? Ultimately we'll talk about who's buying this. The tween isn't buying it, the parent's going to buy it, right? So where are they going to look and see the recommendations for something like that, okay? So who's the decision maker? Ultimately, the parents are the ones that are going to pay for it, all right? So they're going to be the decision maker, right? No matter how much the child wants it, who has the money, okay? You've got to convince the parents to give you a credit card to be able to do that. Okay, economic buyer, not so much in this case. Probably not a lot of saboteurs. But make that list, right? What are the parents likely to be reading, okay? What commercials are they looking for, all right, to be able to do that? What magazines, right? All right, so here's mine. All right, we worked in the semiconductor capital equipment. So I'm going to sell a new $1 million piece of equipment into this space, right? We've done all our work. We do X, Y, Z way better than the current competition. All right, so the user is actually the operator. He or she has almost no power in this decision process. right? They're not, they're gonna say, we've switched technologies, learn how to use this, okay? So they're the person that's gonna have most of the hands-on, but not a lot of influence in the purchasing system, okay? All right, who are the influencers? The CTO, right? You're gonna have to convince them this is the way cool technology. They're gonna have to stake a little bit of their reputation on this, right? I'm bringing in MBE equipment. Yeah, I know it's slower, but it's gonna make the films better. It solves this critical problem we've had with corrosion that happens at year 4. To be able to do that, you've got to get them on board, right? They may not make the decision, but they're going to make a recommendation. The shift supervisor, right? They actually have some power in the process, right? They have 20 operators that are working for them. You've got to convince them that's going to make, they're not going to have to hire more operators. The operators will be happy, stuff like that, right? Because that's their job, right? They don't, they're working 3rd shift, so you're working, midnight to 8 a.m. You don't want to have problems, right? Because then you get called in at midnight to 8 a.m. I'll just reboot the system. But the operator's not allowed to do that. Shift supervisor has to come in and do that. So how are you going to make their life easier? All right, the recommendation might be that lead engineer, the person that's responsible for that process. So ultimately, he or she's going to say, yeah, this is going to work for us. Okay, but you're not done. It's got to then go through an equipment committee. Okay, so once or twice a year, or whenever they change product lines, there's a committee that gets together and decides, okay, this is all the equipment we're going to use. We're going to use the stepper that we had before, because it can still print, 0.000 nanometer lines or whatever we need to do. So that's fine. But now it's got to work with this deposition equipment and this lithography equipment or whatever. So they're actually the ones that are going to recommend a whole set of equipment. Okay? So you've got to get your ducks in a row to convince them. All right? Then it's going to go to the purchasing department. You're not done yet. Okay? They're then going to negotiate the price lower. That's their job, right? That's how they're evaluated, right? So they've given them the answer. Now it's these guys. They're going to want extended warranty. They're going to want a guarantee of uptime. They're going to want certain cost of consumables, right? You can't use, silane gas because I'm worried we'll have to put a whole silane, alarm system in our fab. Okay? So they've got interests as well. So you've got to go work through each of those. Okay? So the saboteurs we talked about, the company that's already there, they're going to fight tooth and nail. They're going to say nasty things about your products, while at the same time asking you for a job because they know you're ultimately going to win. Okay? That's what's going to happen out there. Those sales guys are now looking to join you because they know you've won. But on the way out, they're going to make your life hard as hell. Okay? And then the person that's invested in the existing technology, right? They're going to be there. Oh, no, I've heard somebody tried that. Yeah, didn't work out so well. Okay? So you have to understand those. And you go from there. Because ultimately, you may have to make them happy. So they may just say, oh, Mr. Evaporative Cooler, yeah, now you're evaporative process. You're now in charge of the MBE equipment, right? Sometimes that happens. Go from there. Okay. And then just the saboteurs. Anybody that will perceive that your product will negatively impact them can be a saboteur. Okay. All right. So now we've kind of done those customers. We're going to look at the markets. Okay. And there's different markets that you can try to take your product in. So they classify them in these 4 markets. Lots of books classify your markets lots of different ways. But for the purpose of this, we'll look at these 4 markets. So it can be an existing market. Okay. All right. So most of our products sort of end up in an existing market. It can be a resegmented market. We'll talk about that. That's a market that exists, but you're going to do something differently and try to create your own new segment. Okay? New markets. Probably the hardest to enter into, but potentially the biggest upside. All right? We'll talk about that. And then a clone market. So that's where I take an existing product and take it into a different space, and that space can be geographical. So Baidu is maybe Google in Chinese. Okay? Google's working here. Let's take it over, give it a Chinese interface, make the cultural norms work there. Okay? So that's kind of a clone market. Dancing with the Stars. English show, brought it to America, very popular. Okay? So you've taken something, brought it to a different place or a different market, and made it work there. Okay, those are going to affect all those 9 boxes. So think about that market you're going to be in. Affects the market size, the cost of entry, we'll talk about that, how you're going to launch your product, what are the barriers, and how you have to position your product. All depend on which of those markets you're going to go in. Sales model, the margins, if you're the old rule, at least we had in the capital equipment business, if you're the 3rd player in the market, you are by definition competing for the low-cost market share, right? So the other 2 guys have already taken the high ground. You've got to be price competitive at the bottom just to get in that market. So you can work your way up, but you've got to come in at the bottom. What are the sales cycles? We'll talk about chasm width So that's basically when you get from the first few sales to the majority of the market. Okay, the customer needs and the adoption profiles will be different depending on the market you go in. And then the amount of money it's going to take to get into those markets varies dramatically. So certainly if you're entering a new market, your sales are likely to be low the first few years. You're going to need a lot more capital to survive. Okay, so 4 market types. An existing market basically is what it says. Your product is going to do something different than what the incumbents are. You're going to be better, faster, you can potentially be cheaper. You're better, faster, you're on the high end of that market. Okay? Resegmented market, a lot like that. So there's an existing market, but I'm going to do something in that market to kind of break off my own little segment, and like I'm only competing with myself in that segment. Okay? So you can rebrand. Okay, that's my $35 toenail clipper or fingernail clipper, right? Fingernail clippers are out there, right? But I've got the sexiest, best fingernail, diamond engraved, blades, whatever it is, right? So I've made that niche little market so that I'm competing. You can be also cheaper on the low end. All right, so new market, okay, can be cheaper and good enough. If it's enough difference, you can really create a new market, okay, if you differentiate yourself enough. Or it can be an innovative sort of this disruptive technology that Sukumar talked about. It's so different than what was there before, okay? So we had cell phones, we had music players, Apple put them together, okay? Now I've got a cell phone and a music player and some smart little apps, okay? Right? Did all those things, made the smartphone market, okay? Probably a big enough change that it created a new market where there wasn't any competition before. To be able to do that. And then a clone market is really just this local adaptation. Okay, so look at kind of what are the customers? Are an existing market, the customers are known. That's sort of by definition, it's an existing market. People are buying solutions for that product now, all right? So the customer needs are going to be performance. Competitors are many. So the risk basically is you can't differentiate your product in that market, right? So whatever my new product is, I need to figure out a way to make it stand out so that people buy it, okay? So examples are Google, right? Search engines that existed long before Google got on the board, right? They were always free. Netscape, you guys probably don't even remember Netscape back in the really, really old days. Now there's 4 or 5 different browsers, and if you go overseas, there's, probably hundreds of different browsers. Okay? So a resegmented market, your customers are possibly known, right? There's sort of some underserved segment now, so they're not getting the full advantage of that marketplace. You're going to be a better fit with what they need. The competitors, if you do a good job, not so many, right? You've kind of broken that little segment off. You're kind of an iceberg, at least for the time being. I've broken that segment off, separated from the regular market. If you don't do a very good job, then you're kind of back over here in a bad idea, competing with everybody else to do that. All right, so the risk is, have you understand that market well enough to kind of put that nice little fence around the area. So Southwest, right, we've always had airplanes. Southwest started out, it flew to 3 cities, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. They didn't have tickets. You just showed up, right, and got in line, got on the plane, okay? So there was enough travel between those cities that was a great, model didn't work, right? You just got on, you sat down, plane took off. Planes left every hour. So you showed up at 7, you got on the 7 o'clock flight. You showed up at 7:15, you got on the 8 o'clock flight. Okay, so they resegmented that market because people did not, right? Your business travel, when's your meeting gonna end? How bad's the traffic to the airport, right? So people were always buying, an 8 o'clock flight and would get there at 4. And the airline, well, yeah, sure, we'll change, that's $200. I'm like, what? Yeah. Okay, so they resegmented that market out when they started. And you can see a lot of that in their current kind of model to do that. But when they started out, that was the segment they're after. All right, so if you want a new market, you don't know who your customers are, right? New, sort of by definition. Who are my customers going to be? All right? They're looking for transformational improvements. They're not looking for 1.5 better than what's there. They want 10x better or 100x better to be able to get them. You doing a good job? None, at least initially, right? To do that. You basically have to get into this evangelism and early education cycle. You got to tell people, convince them that you've got a great new product, right? Very hard to be able to do that. The example they use is Groupon. Maybe that's a good example. People are having coupons and half-off things, but they kind of took that into a new space, made it online, made it sort of personable where it was kind of coming out to you. So, but now they've got competitors, right? So lots of people are doing daily deals and things like that. So once you make a market, sort of how do you stay relevant in that market? All right, so clone market, you're making a local version. Competitors, maybe none. You can misjudge the local needs to be able to do that. So Baidu's a big example in China. When we get to that, sometimes there's local regulations, right? So in certain countries, you have to be owned by someone who's a citizen of that country. So you're going to bring that partner with someone who's a citizen in that country to do that localization. Okay. So that market type is going to determine the rate of adoption potentially. It's going to determine your sales and marketing strategies and how much cash. So one of those things when you start segmenting your customers, really get it down to those kind of things. All right. So existing, they exist, and you can name the customers and the market, right? So I'm going after moms with babies who hate cutting their children's fingernails, right? Right? We can all identify that. They want something better, right? That's your goal. I'm going to provide them something better, at least on a price-performance ratio than they have now, okay? Most of us are going to be dealing with things that are technology-driven, right? So my new iPhone 6 has a bigger screen because, my vision isn't very good and I like having bigger text on my phone, okay? Be able to do that. All right, so how you position that, how you understand the customers, how big a customer space you identify, that's going to, determine both the size that you can do and how you're going to position the product. Okay, so risk number one. If you're in an existing market, the minute you come in, the market changes. Right? You come in with a better widget, people that are there are going to defend their turf. Okay? So they're going to do a bunch of things, right? This is kind of the surfing model. Right? As soon as you enter that market, the wave changes. You've got to deal with something different. So they've already got a big network out there, right? So they're already selling, they know a lot of stuff that you don't. Right? So they're going to be able to use that against you. And they're also, hopefully, if they're a good competitor, they're continuing to innovate as well. And so they're going to bring new markets and new products to that market. Okay? So that's the big risk there. So if you think you have a great idea, no one's done it, you bring it out. And I've been in places where GE had a better product out. We established the market. We let them know that there was a market there. They had a better product out with a much better channel in no time at all. So they'd just been kind of sitting on it. They didn't think it was a big market. We proved it was a big market, and they stole the market. It just happens. All right? So if you kind of look at one of the traditional things, and you'll see it in Jeffrey Moore's book, is this kind of market segmentation where you have the early technology enthusiasts. These are the people that are hacking their Google phones and downloading stuff on there, right? Oh, man, I want the coolest stuff. I want all the latest stuff. Many of us are in that category in a lot of cases, okay? So they'll try that. You have the visionaries. They don't want to be in there twiddling bits and downloading, cells. But it looks like cool. I want to get on board. I want to have the latest cool stuff. You then get into those two big segments, where you make all your money. So the people that say, oh yeah, this is better. That's kind of the pragmatists. They see that it's better. Yep, I'm on board. Conservatives, they're kind of the tailing end. They'll wait, make sure it works. They don't want to be the first people to try it and get from there. And then you have the skeptics, sort of my parents. They don't really ever figure out why we need a smartphone. Why would you ever want to look up something on the internet? So they have a flip phone, and it works for them. It has 10 digits, 10 buttons. That's all the phone they're going to need. There's unlikely no one's found the app that's convinced my parents that they need anything more than a phone. Texting is already hard enough. They're like, I have to hit the 5 key 3 times to get the L to come up. Why is that? Well, here, you could have this phone that has 20, I don't want a phone with 26 buttons. I don't know how to dial, right? So, they're over there in the skeptic side. So, now you're entering an existing market, right? As you begin to take market share, your revenue stream kind of makes sense, right? More and more people adopt, it's roughly linear revenue increase, okay? So, it's the thing to think about there as you're working through that. Okay, so if I'm resegmenting the market, right? So I can be a low-cost provider, offer, this boarding, these features. Maybe I'm a high-end provider. Virgin Atlantic, so I run New York and DC to London routes, really nice planes, really, whatever it is. Whole Foods, right? There's Whole Foods if you shop there, right? Grocery stores have been around since the Middle Ages, I'm sure, right? But they've got a unique niche, really high-end, really organic, really well-prepared, really well-presented, right? And do that. So they basically said, there's a niche for this, prepared salads or, Chinese food that's prepackaged, whatever their business plan was, they identified a need there to be able to do that. All right, so in a resegmented market, what are you looking at? What can you eliminate that your industry has always competed on? Okay, so you have these travel sites, right? So we used to have travel agents back in the really, really old days, right? So you'd call up your local travel agent, say, hey, I want to go from here to here. They would say, let me load my Sabre application, some little text-based thing, and it would print out a bunch of fares, and they would do that, all right? So we can get rid of that. We can bring that information online. I've eliminated, having to pay my travel agent $25 for every ticket I've had, right? Okay, so you can do something they've done. Can you change the game and do something that's, well above or below the industry standard? Can I get rid of something that the industry's always done and is paying for, but I don't think people need? See if I can think. Well, travel agent's kind of a good example, right? We sort of eliminate, they weren't, at least for simple flights, right? They weren't adding value. Okay? So now we'll do with Apple Pay or something like that, right? I used to have cash, checks, credit cards. Now I just kind of wave my smartphone somewhere near some terminal, right? Okay? Or security, right? If I can say, oh, I've segmented this market because now, no one's going to steal your number, right? It's a unique 35-digit, triply encoded number that, only works once, right? So I'm kind of solving that problem in a different way. What can you do above the industry standard? And the terminology you hear often sometimes is this blue ocean strategy. So I've resegmented enough that now I've kind of, taken this like a, balloon. I've kind of made my part now big enough that I've made a blue ocean and there's sort of nobody else around to be able to do that. So Southwest kind of did that. Now they have competitors, right? So some people don't like Southwest. Some people want, I want to know what seat. I like 9D. I always want to be there. But for other people, getting on the plane is fine. Right? I'm on there early. I'm up, 24 hours ahead of time. I'm always getting the A. Right? People that get the C. I'm sorry, Charlie. Yeah, bad for you. And then C. So, to go from there. Okay. So here you have that chasm. You have a small chasm you need to cross, right? These early people, oh man, I'm on Southwest. I'm checking in. That's cool for me. But the main, you got to educate and bring the mainstream on board that, you don't have an assigned seat. That's okay. You can pick a window. You can pick an aisle. If you're a C, you get the middle. Sorry, You've got to convince them. So there you have a much more gradual, as you sort of convert the existing base over, you're going to be low till you get across this and get to the biggest part of the market, and then it can take off. Okay, but that's a different capital structure you're going to need to get there, right? You're going to have those low revenues for some period of time until people come to realize the value of your segmentation.
You have to be patient as you're the starter of the business.
We have to be patient. You have to plan your money, right? You gotta. The money is often the biggest problem in most things. You're either going to give up more of your company to get more money, and see, or part of the problem sometimes now is you have to have the airlines. You have to have a nationwide network, right? FedEx and UPS. It's really hard to imagine some third carrier, entering that space now, right? You have to have planes. You have to have landing rights. They sort of made these barriers now. But maybe somebody comes up, maybe 3D printing, right? You give me your document, I scan it here, and build it, on the other side. Maybe, there's, something like that, right? Basically when photocopying started out, once again, well before your time, that was ridiculously expensive, right? Very few people just had, you were only copying, very expensive documents. Now that it's a penny a piece, right? You do that. Now you just scan it, you don't even print it at the other end. So that'll be changed. Yeah, sorry.
Well, actually, a nice modern example for that would be with Tesla Motors. Tesla Motors is currently having issues because they don't deal with dealerships.
Right.
And many states have laws that say you have to go to dealerships.
Right. So they've tried to change the market dynamics, right? They got rid of dealerships, something that, people really didn't like in many cases, certainly didn't like the haggling part to be able to, absolutely. So that's a good example. So they've tried to resegment, and we're seeing, sometimes not easy to do, right? There's sometimes rules that people fight that. Yeah, so they're trying to, maybe they cross that chasm in the $100,000 car market. I think, their next big chasm will, can you cross that in the $30,000 car market? Do that. But they've got those different segments, right? The person that's going to buy a $100,000 car looking for a whole bunch of different things than the person that's going to buy a $30,000 car. Okay, so a new type of market. Customers don't exist today. And I think we'll talk in a few slides about how you sort of try to map that out. That's always a hard problem of, well, it doesn't exist today. How do I know who my customers are? Yeah, so how will they find out about you? How will they know that they really need your product? Right? Even if it's a cool product, how do they know? And how do you know how big the market size is going to be? Once again, it's a new product. How do you find that out? And then if you can do that, how do you give your enough space around your product that you can grow? So here the chasm's bigger. So, usually not hard to get, technologists excited about some new things, right? Having them recommend it to replace their whole data center, okay, that takes some work, right, to be able to do that. So there's this chasm, and that affects your revenue line, right? You're going to get these early adopters, right? They're going to be on board. Oh, I can hack my phone. I can download your app. That's cool. Most of these people don't want to be doing that to their phone, right? So you've got maybe some lean years, but then you can get what they call a hockey stick approach, where once you cross that chasm, everybody's bought in, yeah, I need this, and the revenues can go up quite quickly. Okay, clone market, so I kind of talked about this. Language, culture, there's import restrictions, weird things like the US, only citizens or domestically chartered companies can own farmland, okay? So that's a rule, so companies that want to then export US beef without having to go through all this stuff, you set up a US company, that company can own the farmland. Okay, so they kind of, Kobe beef, we're now shipping back to Japan in some cases, but US, it's basically a Japanese, or US subsidiary of a Japanese company doing that because there's local rules about what you can do. You want a big market though, right? If you're going to do all that work, so pick a big market. ESPN said, well, there's a big market for Spanish language sports, right? I've got all the video, I've got all that. Okay, there's a big Spanish language market. So they kind of cloned what they did and went after the Spanish market. Okay, so now how do you figure out who your competitors are? This is one of my favorite charts. This is from one of Steve's new stuff. So all of us have always, when you start off in marketing, you make a chart like this. So you find your to goodness axis. I'm better. My product's going to be better in two things. It's always important to do two things. And everybody else, right? So here's my company making tornadoes, and all these other companies are always down in this bottom corner, right? They're bad.
Something wrong
So that's
with
you're going to have on it. So yeah, you guys think this is funny?
That's
Okay.
wrong.
This is from one of my recent NSF proposals. All right. So here's the quantum cascade lasers, erbium lag, YAG lasers. They're all bad. They're down in this corner. Here's my pulse fiber lasers. Man, I'm over in the good corner, right? These are the markets. I'm going to be able to do ultra-fast spectroscopy. I'm going to be an ultra-fast pump source. And yeah, people use erbium lag lasers for laser surgery, but man, look at this. We get over here, and where my product is, things are good, okay? So those exist. Everybody sells their product that way, okay? But that's an existing market, right? Okay, I know what's out there. I know what people are using it for. My product is way better, okay? So that's useful for an existing product. Okay, another way you often do it in an existing product, with you guys, do people play Foursquare anymore out at elementary school and gym? So it's a Foursquare plot.
Dating. You're dating
Okay, so
yourself.
the game is a ball. You kind of push it around and try to push it past everybody else. No, clearly not. Okay, let's go for the different. So basically,
Absolute blank fake.
absolutely not working. So you basically have two axes,
You go
right?
from them.
And it's almost always performance and cost. So these charts almost